Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. My name is Brandon Davis, the host of this lovely podcast here. Today, I want to talk about a really important topic, which is transgender friendly healthcare, or rather, the lack thereof, and the barriers to access faced by a large number of transgender and non binary individuals. To help me with this, I'll be talking to Luciano Castro, a close friend of mine who has had experience navigating this realm pretty recently. This is an important topic for me personally as a young non binary person who's honestly baffled by the general lack of information surrounding medical transition methods, and who has many friends who are equally frustrated with the number of hoops one has to jump through to be seen and given medical help. Furthermore, trans healthcare and trans issues in general are important to consider in a broader feminist context because, as queer theorist Susan Stryker notes, an acknowledgement of and attentiveness to trans issues helps us develop a more complex and interesting societal concept of gender and what that means for us in our everyday lives. Trans specific healthcare is a relatively new field. While transgender people have been around forever, it is only recently that the medical community has started taking their treatment and concerns seriously. There are critical gaps in general knowledge regarding hormone treatments, puberty blockers, transition of care practices, etc. There's also widespread gatekeeping and known instances of healthcare providers undermining their trans patients' autonomy and refusing to treat and prescribe even when a patient has given their informed consent. One of the major contradictions within trans healthcare is in the realm of mental health. Many physicians will only treat patients with clean mental health records, but trans people, and young trans people in particular, are one of the most vulnerable populations for things like depression and anxiety. Not to mention that referrals are largely dependent on a DSM 5 gender dysphoria diagnosis, which means that the patient not only is experiencing a sense that their identity, their gender identity, is different than the identity they were assigned at birth, but it also carries with it the stipulation that they must be experiencing some sort of adverse effect, some sort of crisis, which means that care can't begin unless the patient is in some sort of mental health crisis. So, here to help me unpack all of this and some other things as well is Luciano Castro. First of all, thank you for joining me today. This is especially, you know, going to be very interesting to talk to you about this just because like you've very recently been through all of this stuff and a lot of these processes. So you've got like firsthand knowledge of what it's like to navigate trans healthcare in 2021.
Unfortunately and fortunately.
um, so I guess like the first question was just how difficult was it for you to even like find a healthcare provider in the first place, like in terms of like getting hormones and stuff?
In terms of hormones, definitely. I think when I was thinking of starting, I asked my family doctor, and he didn't know anything about it because he's your usual doctor here in the South who, along with not knowing about the specific questions I was asking, didn't know anything about trans people in general. So everything I found was basically online from other trans people about how to start hormones, the effects, and all that. And kind of it was in between Tumblr and Reddit and Google, I guess. But then they all pointed me towards Planned Parenthood, and that was where I got my hormones first prescribed. I had a really good doctor from there, so Planned Parenthood is pretty good with this stuff. Um, but it kind of it's kind of hard to find if you're looking for it alone to figure it all out.
Yeah, and I think that's like it's really important to like talk about that too because I think I was reading in one of the studies that I was looking at that there's only like as of 2018 there were only like 36 like trans healthcare like specialists in all of North America.
Huh.
like
Hmm.
um in terms of like well not like specific only 36 physicians but like 36 like healthcare centers specifically for trans people, which I was like
Oh yeah, we don't have any of that near us.
yeah, and I was like because the study was comparing that to places like Europe where there's pretty much at least one in most major cities. I think the guy who was writing it was from Germany, so he was saying like a lot of major cities in Germany have um specialists like that. But
Oh yeah,
like
it's because that's like they have like clinics and such. I've heard
mhm.
of the clinics in Britain that they aren't any good, but they do have clinics specifically for that. I don't think we even yeah outside of those like probably individual uh specialists, we don't even have like actual. I think Planned Parenthood is as close as you can get to it.
So have you like experienced any of that sort of thing like in terms of like talking to doctors and things like that like with that like gatekeeping or like where they don't necessarily believe you?
Yeah, that's like I mean, I've learned at doctors' offices to like be very careful about what you like say and whatnot because I've had bad experience with the gynecologist and my doctor. He had like issues with this where beforehand, where like definitely if I was less proactive and more of a person who was trying to go through my family doctor, or maybe if I had had no other choice, then he would have been very bad because that's kind of how he approached the entire thing. It was like I'd ask him questions about like, hey, like you are the person with the most knowledge about my like health history. So do you think this is a good idea? Because I want to like do this. Um, I think specifically too, I was like, should I start testosterone or whatnot? And he'd be like, that might have effects. I don't know. I'll get back to you or whatever on it. He'd be
Yeah.
like super vague, and then and I think these were deliberately attempts to stop me.
All right. Once again, thank you to Luciano for speaking with me today and for sharing your stories and your insights. And thank you, listeners, for taking the time to listen to two trans people talk about healthcare. As we mentioned earlier, there is a really frustrating lack of knowledge and research regarding transgender people and their experiences with medicine and gender affirming healthcare in general. In light of that, I would also like to thank the researchers, institutions, and journals whose contributions to the academic and professional world's knowledge on transgender issues and healthcare helped make this podcast possible. All of my sources will be listed in the description, so I highly encourage you to check them out if you can. It is my sincere hope that we can continue the conversation and continue to see progress made in the field of transgender inclusive healthcare. Until next time, I'm Brandon Davis. Additionally, my full conversation with Luciano will be linked in the description. If you are interested, feel free to check that out as well.